ni hao, xin jiao, and all the other greetings from a blisteringly, mantle-meltingly hot day in Shanghai, China. Like a lot of other runners out there, I suffer from what you might call a mild obsession with running shoes and something bordering on an addiction to online shopping. Right now, I have a dozen pairs of running shoes in my rotation. Well, I have 11 pairs in my actual rotation and one is still sat in its box on top of my cupboard. But as our big move to Vietnam draws ever closer, I've been restricting myself to the 4 pairs that are closest to retirement. That way, I can get my mileage out of them and then I won't have to pack them up and take them with me when we leave. As someone who long ago fell down the running shoe rabbit hole, I thought it might be fun just to run through my current rotation in preparation for seeing off some faithful foot-borne friends. First up are the Nike Invincible 2s. I picked these up for about 740 RMB and to date they have just under 800 kilometers on them. They were the first pair of proper max cushioned recovery or easy day shoes that I ever owned. The Invincibles offer a soft, bouncy ride focused solely on comfort. The midsole is pillowy soft and the upper is honestly the comfiest of any shoe I've ever owned. I don't feel like I can run either fast or far in these shoes, as they're very heavy and they start to feel mushy once I take them up past around about 16 kilometers. But that's not what they were made for, and for shorter, slower runs where I'm taking things easy or I just want to baby my legs, they really are an absolute dream. There is one downside to mention, and this holds true for literally every single pair of Nike running shoes that either I or my wife has ever owned, and that's that the build quality, in particular the glue that Nike uses, is absolutely atrocious. So if you take a look at this shoe, the upper's coming right off the midsole. There's quite a big gap there, as you can tell. And this honestly started happening before I'd even got to 300 kilometers, which I should also note is the latest I've seen this happen on any pair of Nike running shoes that we own. If you take a look at the other one, there's a hole there in I guess that goes right through to the sock liner. I don't know if you can see the blue material. I can literally poke my finger and see it from the inside out. I will say that this hasn't really affected the ride, but it is disappointing because these things are hardly cheap, and I've never seen this happen on a single other shoe from any other brand. Still, it hasn't come completely off yet, and I'm probably going to retire it after my next run. So following on, we have the Asics Triumph 20. This is currently the well-rounded, do-it-all daily trainer in my lineup. I originally bought it expecting a more soft, max cushion sort of a vibe. I was hoping for a lighter, more versatile take on the Invincible 2. But in reality, despite the huge stack height, it offers much more of a traditional daily trainer sort of a ride. The Power Run Plus midsole isn't particularly soft, but it offers a decent amount of response when you do try and pick up the pace. I picked these up for around about 940 RMB, hoping for a dedicated long run shoe. And while they're perfectly fine in that role, after I decided to retire my Vaporflies as my dedicated race day shoes and use those for my long runs, I now employ these as my main daily trainers for those days when my legs aren't feeling particularly battered and bruised. I've currently got 690 kilometers on this pair, and they've been a great workhorse of a shoe. If you're looking for something that's capable of handling all of your training, from slower runs up to threshold pace, then I think this would be a really fine choice for that. I would just like to add that I've seen a few people online refer to the midsole as bouncy, and I'd like to make it clear that, at least in my opinion, that is utter nonsense. It's not a bad ride, it's very smooth and they roll through nicely, but it's more of a traditional daily trainer sort of a ride, and there is zero bounce. Coming up next is the Hoker Mac 4. These are the lighter weight, firmer, faster daily trainers in my rotation. I've got about 680 kilometers on this pair, and these are my go-to shoes for when my legs are feeling super fresh or where I want to throw in a few strides at the end. I think they'd also be great for threshold and speed work as well if you wanted a smaller rotation or a more old school ground feely sort of shoe for your faster stuff. I absolutely loved these shoes when I first got them, but the more I've run in them, the firmer and harsher they started to feel to me, which is why I usually now only take them out when my legs are feeling really well rested and aren't showing any fatigue from the day before. For me, I like to have a rotation where I can split my easy daily miles between a more cushion-focused daily trainer and a slightly lighter, faster one. and the Mac 4 fills the lateral pretty well. Although I am hoping that when I do get around to replacing them, the next shoe in my rotation can have a little bit more cushioning. Last, well, kind of, we have the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 2. These were my first pair of super shoes. My wife got them for me as a present, and I'm not going to go and ask her exactly how much they cost, but they weren't cheap. I originally used them exclusively for races and time trials until I replaced them for that purpose with a pair of the New Balance RC Elite V2. And so recently I've started using these for my long runs and some of my faster stuff as well. There's a reason these shoes have such a great reputation. Running in them feels special, and they just feel incredibly fast underfoot. They're soft and bouncy, and they feel like they really propel you forwards with each stride. I've run 3 marathons in these, as well as a bunch of halves and some 10Ks and 5Ks. The upper's kind of crap and the tongue's annoying, but the magic is in the midsole, and they really do feel like they're on another level. I've got about 580 kilometers on my pair, and I do feel like they've started to lose a bit of their spring, but they're still more than capable of going fast and going far. And those are the 4 shoes that make up the bulk of my current rotation and that I'm planning on retiring before we leave China. However, there is one more pair I'd like to mention, and that is the Be My Carbon 42K2. I'm planning on doing a proper review of these soon, so I won't go into too much detail here, but I'll just say that I've been using these for most of my threshold runs. They're a bit of an odd shoe, and I can't really say that I would recommend them to anyone, despite the fact that I do personally quite like them. There's just too much about them that feels unpolished or just slightly off. As a line of running shoes, to me, they definitely still feel like a work in progress. All right, that's my current running shoe rotation. I feel like it has all my bases covered, and I wouldn't say there's a real weak link in there. But what do you think? I know the channel's new and still absolutely tiny, so maybe asking for interaction is still a little bit hopeful, but I would honestly love to hear what people would swap in or out, what I should replace these shoes with when I do retire them, and what you use for your own rotations. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time out.
This is really good.